The rain was coming down hard that night in the Oregon forest. Dr. David was out there with his equipment, doing what he always did when he couldn't sleep. He studied animals in the wild, and nighttime was when the most interesting things happened. His flashlight cut through the darkness as he checked his cameras near the old creek. That's when he heard it. A sound like thunder, but different, wrong somehow. The ground shook under his feet, and the trees lit up with a strange blue light for just a second. Then everything went quiet again. Except for the rain. David stood there for a moment, his heart beating fast. In 20 years of working in these woods, he'd never heard anything like that. Maybe a plane had trouble. Maybe someone needed help. He grabbed his radio and headed toward where the light had come from. What he found changed everything. There was a crater in the ground, still smoking despite the rain. And in the middle of it was something that looked like a ship, but not like any ship David had ever seen. It was twisted metal and strange lights, half buried in the dirt. Parts of it were still glowing with that same blue light he'd seen. But that wasn't the strangest part. Next to the wreckage, there was a person. At least, David thought it was a person at first. She was lying on her side, not moving. Her clothes looked like some kind of armor, but it was cracked and broken. And her skin was silver blue, like moonlight on water. David's first thought was to run. His second thought was that someone was hurt and needed help. The second thought won. He dropped his equipment and ran down into the crater, up close. He could see she was breathing, but barely. There was silver liquid on the ground around her. Was that blood? Her face was almost human, but not quite. Her ears were pointed, and there were thin lines of light under her skin that pulsed weakly. "Hey," David said softly, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" She didn't respond. Her eyes were closed, and she looked pale, even with that strange skin color. David had taken first aid classes for his work. He knew how to help hurt animals, and he figured the basics had to be the same. He checked her pulse. It was there, but fast and weak. She was alive, but she needed help soon. David looked around the crater. Whatever this ship was, it wasn't going to fly again anytime soon. And if she was from somewhere else, then she was stranded here just like anyone would be after a car crash. David made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He carefully lifted her up. She was lighter than he expected, but she felt real enough, human enough, except for the skin and the faint humming sound that seemed to come from somewhere inside her armor. He carried her out of the crater and back toward his truck. The drive to his cabin took 20 minutes. David kept looking at her in the passenger seat, wondering if he was dreaming. But she was still there, still breathing, still hurt, real as anything. His cabin was small but comfortable. He built it himself after his wife died, needing a place to be alone with his work and his thoughts. Now he was bringing home a stranger from the stars. David laid her on his couch and got his first aid kit. He patched up plenty of injured animals over the years. How different could this be? He cleaned the silver blood from a cut on her forehead and bandaged what looked like burns on her arms. Her armor was warm to the touch, and some parts of it seemed to be fixing themselves slowly. As he worked, she started to wake up. Her eyes opened, and David saw they were a deep purple color, like violets. She looked at him, then at the ceiling, then around the room. Confusion, then fear crossed her face. She tried to sit up quickly and gasped in pain. David gently pushed her back down. "Easy," he said. "You're hurt. You need to rest." She stared at him and said something in a language that sounded like music and metal at the same time. David shook his head. "I don't understand," he said. "But you're safe here. I'm not going to hurt you." She studied his face for a long moment. Then something on her armor beeped, and light started flashing on what looked like a small device on her wrist. She touched it, and suddenly she spoke again. "You help me." Her voice was strange, like it was coming through water, but the words were English now. "Yes," David said. "Your ship crashed. You were hurt." She looked down at herself, then at him again. Why what? Why did you help me? You do not know me. I am not like you." David thought about that. It was a fair question. She was clearly not human. She could have been dangerous. Any sane person would have called the government or the military or someone official. Because you needed help, he said simply. That's what people do. She stared at him like he'd said something impossible. My ship, she said, trying to sit up. Again, I must contact my people. I must. She touched her wrist device, and her face fell. David could see despair in those purple eyes. It's broken, isn't it? He asked. She nodded slowly. The communication array was damaged in the crash. I cannot reach my home world. I cannot call for rescue. She looked at David with something that might have been panic. I am stranded on your planet. David poured her a glass of water and handed it to her. What's your name? She hesitated, then said, I am Captain Zara of the Kitherian Imperial Fleet. She paused, and her voice got quieter. I was a warrior. I'm David, he said. I study animals here in the forest. And you're welcome to stay here as long as you need to. Zara looked at him like he'd grown a second head. You would shelter an alien, a stranger, someone who could be dangerous. Are you dangerous? David asked. Zara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very small. I was supposed to be, but I failed. My entire squadron is gone. I am the only one left, and I could not save them. I could not even save myself. David saw tears in her eyes, real tears. Just like human tears. Whatever else she was, her pain was something he understood. You survived, he said gently. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. Outside, the storm was getting worse. Lightning flashed through the windows, and the wind howled round the cabin. But inside, by the warm firelight, a human and an alien sat together. Both of them alone in the universe. Both of them trying to figure out what came next. Zara looked around the cabin, at the books, on the shelves, the pictures on the walls, the simple furniture that made it feel like home. It was so different from the cold metal of her ship, from the harsh military bases of her world. Your people, she said slowly, they are not what we were told. What were you told? That humans were primitive, selfish, that you cared only for yourselves. She looked at David, confusion clear in her face. But you saved me, a complete stranger, an enemy, for all you knew. David shrugged. Maybe we're not as primitive as you thought. For the first time since she'd woken up, Zara almost smiled. No, she said quietly. Perhaps you are not. The rain kept falling, and the night got darker. But in that small cabin, something new was beginning. Neither David nor Zara knew it yet. But this was the start of something that would change everything. They thought they knew about friendship, about courage, and about what it really meant to find a home. The first morning was awkward for both of them. David woke up early, like always, and found Zara sitting perfectly straight on his couch, staring at the wall. She hadn't moved from that spot all night. Did you sleep at all? He asked, rubbing his eyes. Sleep is a weakness where I come from, she said. Warriors must always be ready. David looked at her for a moment. She was still wearing that damaged armor, still sitting like she was expecting an attack at any second. Her purple eyes had dark circles under them. Well, you're not there anymore, David said gently, and you're hurt. Your body needs rest too. Heal. Zara looked confused by this idea. On her world, showing weakness meant death. But here was David, telling her it was okay to be tired. It was okay to need help. David made breakfast, eggs, toast, and coffee. Simple food that smelled amazing after days of whatever Zara had been eating on her ship. She watched him cook like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. You prepare food yourself? She asked. Of course. Don't you? Warriors receive nutrition packs. Cooking is not something we learn. David handed her a plate. Zara stared at it like it might explode. The colors, the smell, the warmth rising from the eggs. It was nothing like the gray paste she was used to. She took a small bite and her eyes went wide. This is complex, she said, amazed. There are so many different tastes. David smiled. That's just eggs and butter. For the first time since the crash, Zara looked almost happy. But then her face fell again, and David saw her touch the broken device on her wrist. I tried to send a distress signal last night, she said quietly. The transmitter is completely destroyed. My people think I'm dead, and maybe that's better. Why would that be better? Zara was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was full of pain. Because I failed them. I was supposed to protect my squadron. Instead, I watched them die while I ran away like a coward. David sat down across from her. You survived. That's not cowardice. That's strength. You don't understand, Zara said, her voice getting harder. In my culture, there is no honor in survival without victory. I should have died with them, but then you wouldn't be here now. You wouldn't have the chance to do something else with your life. Zara stared at him. The idea of doing something else, something other than fighting, had never occurred to her. On her world, you were born to fight, you lived to fight, and you died fighting. There was nothing else. I don't know how to be anything else, she whispered. David reached across the table and touched her hand gently. Her skin was warm, despite its strange color. Then learn, he said. You have time now. That's when something broke inside Zara. All the pain she'd been holding back, all the grief and confusion and fear came pouring out at once. She put her head in her hands and cried. Not the silent, controlled tears of a warrior, but real, messy, human-like sobs. I don't know what to do, she said through her tears. I don't know how to live without war. I don't know how to be weak. But I can't be strong anymore either. David didn't say anything. He just sat there with her while she cried, occasionally handing her tissues. His wife used to cry like this sometimes when her illness got bad. He learned that sometimes people just needed someone to sit with them in their pain. When Zara finally stopped crying, she looked embarrassed. Warriors don't cry, she said. Maybe that's the problem, David replied. Maybe warriors should cry sometimes. Over the next few days, David tried to show Zara what normal life looked like. He took her outside to see the forest in daylight. She was amazed by the colors, the green leaves, the brown earth, the blue sky. Her world was mostly gray metal and artificial lights. Your planet is beautiful, she said, watching a butterfly land on a flower. It's your planet to now, David said, at least for a while. Zara practiced walking without her armor, which was slowly repairing itself but was still uncomfortable. David gave her some of his old clothes, a simple shirt and jeans. She stared at herself in the mirror like she was seeing a stranger. I look almost human, she said. You look like yourself, David replied, just more comfortable. The hardest part was the nights. Zara would sit up, staring out the window, waiting for enemies that would never come. David would find her there. In the morning, exhausted but still alert. What are you watching for? He asked one morning. Anything, she said. Everything. That's what warriors do. But what if nothing bad is coming? Zara looked at him like he'd asked her to explain gravity. Something bad is always coming. David thought about that. Maybe on her world, that was true. But here, in his quiet forest, the only things that came at night were owls and deer. Not here, he said. Here, you're safe. Zara wanted to believe him, but safety wasn't something she understood. She'd been fighting since she was a child. Fear and alertness were as natural to her as breathing. But slowly, very slowly, she began to relax. David's calm presence, the peaceful forest, the simple routine of cooking and eating and talking, it all worked on her like medicine. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Zara did something that surprised them both. She asked David to tell her about love. Love, David asked, not sure he'd heard right. I have observed humans, Zara said carefully. You speak of love often. You have pictures of someone important to you on your walls. But I don't understand what it means. David looked at the photos of his wife, Rebecca, scattered around the cabin. Even 2 years after her death, seeing her face still made his chest tight. Love is caring about someone more than you care about yourself, he said slowly. It's wanting them to be happy, even if it costs you something. That sounds like weakness, Zara said, but she didn't sound convinced. Sometimes it is, David admitted, but it's also the strongest thing humans can do. Zara was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that broke David's heart. I have never been loved, and I have never loved anyone. In my world, attachment is forbidden. It makes you weak. It makes you hesitate in battle. David looked at this strong, broken warrior sitting in his living room, and he felt something he hadn't felt since Rebecca died. Not romantic love, that was different, but something like care, protection, the desire to help someone heal. Would you like to learn? He asked gently. Zara looked at him with those purple eyes, full of pain and hope and fear all mixed together. I don't know how, she whispered. I could teach you, David said, if you want. Zara was quiet for so long that David thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she nodded. Double quotes, please, she said, and that one word carried more emotion than David had heard. In her voice since the crash, teach me how to love. Teaching someone how to feel emotions was harder than David had expected. Zara approached it like a military mission at first, asking for specific instructions and tactics. But feelings don't work that way. Show me the procedure for friendship, she said one morning, sitting at his kitchen table with the serious expression she used for everything. David almost laughed. There isn't a procedure, Zara. Friendship just happens. Everything has a procedure, she insisted. Combat, navigation, equipment maintenance. There must be steps to follow. David poured himself coffee and thought about how to explain something that had always seemed natural to him. Okay, he said finally. Step 1, spend time together. Step 2, talk about things that matter. Step 3, care about each other. That's it, Zara frowned. That's the simple. What about strategy? What about objectives? The objective is to enjoy each other's company. The strategy is to be yourself. This concept seemed to break something in Zara's brain. She stared at David like he was speaking a foreign language. Be myself. But myself is a failed warrior who let her friends die. Why would anyone want to spend time with that? David set down his coffee and looked at her seriously. Because that's not all you are. You're also someone who's trying to learn and grow. Someone who's brave enough to ask for help. Someone who makes really interesting observations about everything around her. I do. Yesterday you spent an hour watching ants carry food back to their nest. You said they reminded you of your people, but that the ants seemed happier about their work. Zara had forgotten about that. She'd been fascinated by the tiny creatures, working together without anyone forcing them to. It was so different from the rigid military structure she knew. That was observation for tactical purposes, she said, but she didn't sound sure. That was curiosity. David said, that was you being interested in the world around you. That's part of who you are when you're not trying to be a warrior. Over the following weeks, David introduced Zara to things she'd never experienced. Music was the first breakthrough. He played her classical pieces on his old stereo, and she sat perfectly still, listening with the same intensity she'd once used. To track enemies, it's like organized sound, she said, amazed. But it makes me feel things I don't have words for. That's the point, David said. Not everything needs words. They listened to different types of music together. Rock made her nervous, too much like the sounds of battle. Jazz confused her, too unpredictable. But classical music, with its patterns and progressions, spoke to something deep inside her. One evening, David found her crying while listening to a piano piece. Are you okay? He asked, worried. I don't know, she said, wiping her eyes. The music makes my chest hurt, but not in a bad way. Is this what humans call sadness? Maybe. David said, or maybe it's beauty. Sometimes they feel the same. David also tried to teach her about humor. This was much harder. Zara's people didn't joke. Everything was serious. Everything was life or death. When David told her simple jokes, she analyzed them like battle plans. I don't understand the tactical advantage of this story about the chicken crossing the road, she said, completely serious. There's no tactical advantage. It's just supposed to make you smile. Why would I want to smile about chickens? Poor strategic planning? David realized that humor required a kind of mental flexibility that Zara had never developed. But one day, While he was trying to teach her to play chess, something clicked. She watched him accidentally knock over his own king while reaching for a different piece. "You have just defeated yourself," she observed. "Yeah, I'm not very good at this game." A warrior who conquers himself is either very wise or very foolish. David looked at her, then started laughing. After a moment, Sarah's mouth twitched. Then she made a sound that was almost a giggle. "That was a funny?" she asked, like she wasn't sure. "That was funny," David confirmed. It was her first laugh. And David felt ridiculously proud. But the biggest breakthrough came when Sarah started talking about her lost squadron. She'd been carrying the guilt and grief alone, the way warriors were taught to do. David encouraged her to share the memories, not just their deaths, but their lives. "Tell me about them," he said one evening as they sat by the fire. "They were my responsibility." Sarah said, her voice tight, "They were also your friends, weren't they?" Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, she began to talk. About Kale, who could fix any piece of equipment but couldn't remember to eat regular meals. About Nova, who was the best pilot in the fleet but was afraid of small spaces. About Raven, who collected interesting rocks from every planet they visited. As she talked, David realized that Sarah hadn't just lost her squadron, she'd lost her family. These weren't just fellow soldiers, they were people she'd lived with, fought with, cared about in the only way she knew how. "You did love them," David said gently. "Maybe not the way humans love, but you loved them." Sarah looked surprised. "But I was taught that attachment was weakness. Maybe your teachers were wrong about that too." This idea, that her entire culture might be wrong about something so fundamental, shook Sarah to her core. But it also freed something inside her. If love wasn't weakness, then maybe caring about David wasn't weakness either. Maybe wanting to protect this strange, kind human was actually strength. "I think," she said slowly, "I am beginning to understand what you meant about love. Yeah, it's not about tactics or objectives. It's about choosing to care, even when it hurts. Even when it's dangerous." David smiled. "That's exactly right." As the days passed, Sarah began to change in ways neither of them expected. She started noticing things, the way morning light came through the windows, the sound of rain on the roof, the taste of David's cooking. She was learning to experience the world instead of just surviving in it. But she was also hiding something. Late at night, when David was asleep, she monitored the communication device she'd managed to partially repair. Strange signals were coming through, not from her people, but from others. Signals that made her blood run cold. Her enemies were out there, searching. And they were getting closer to Earth every day. She didn't tell David about this. How could she explain that his kindness, his love, his willingness to help her might have doomed his entire planet? So she kept the secret, even as it ate away at her, because for the first time in her life, she had something worth protecting. And she would do whatever it took to keep David and his world safe, even if it meant facing her greatest fears. David knew something was wrong. For weeks now, he'd watched Sarah grow more comfortable, more human in many ways. She laughed at his jokes, helped him cook dinner, and even started sleeping through the night. But lately, she'd been different. Worried, she would stare out the window for hours. And sometimes he caught her working on her wrist device when she thought he wasn't looking. "Sarah," he said one morning, finding her at the kitchen table with strange symbols glowing on her screen. "What are you working on?" She quickly shut off the device and looked up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Nothing important, just checking old files." David had learned to read her expressions over the past month. This wasn't the face she made when she was confused about human customs. This was the face she made when she was afraid. "You're lying to me," he said gently. Sarah froze. In her world, being caught in a lie meant punishment, maybe death. But David's voice wasn't angry. It was concerned. She started, then stopped. She looked down at her hands. "I cannot tell you." "Why not?" "Because you will hate me for it." David sat down across from her. "Sarah, I've seen you at your worst. I found you crying in a crater, broken and afraid. Nothing you could tell me would make me hate you. Sarah's purple eyes filled with tears. She touched her wrist device, and the screen lit up again. This time, she didn't hide it from David. These are signals, she said quietly. They've been getting stronger every day. David looked at the screen. He couldn't read the alien symbols, but he could see patterns, frequencies, coordinates, signals from your people. No. Zara's voice was barely a whisper. From the ones who destroyed my squadron. The Dominion, they're following my ship's trail. David felt his blood turn cold. They're coming here. They've been scanning this system for weeks. Looking for survivors. Looking for me. Zara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I should have told you sooner, but I was selfish. I wanted to stay here. I wanted to keep learning about love and friendship and all the beautiful things your people do. I didn't want it to end. David stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. How long do we have? 3 days, maybe 4. The ships are fast. Zara stood up and began pacing, her old military training taking over. I have to leave. I have to take my ship's wreckage and go far away from here. Maybe they'll follow me and leave your world alone. Your ship doesn't fly anymore. Then I'll find another way. I won't let them hurt you because of me. David watched her pace back and forth like a caged animal. The calm, curious person she'd become was disappearing, replaced by the terrified warrior he'd first found in the forest. What do they want? He asked. Resources. Your planet is rich in materials they need for their war machines and humans. Zara stopped pacing and looked at him with pain in her eyes. Humans would make good soldiers if they were trained properly. Or good workers in their factories? David understood. These weren't explorers or diplomats coming to Earth. These were conquerors. We have to warn people, he said. Who would believe us? Who would listen to a story about aliens and invasion fleets? David thought about that. She was right. If he called the police or the military, they'd think he was crazy. Unless, what if we had proof? Zara looked at him. What kind of proof? You, your ship, your technology. If the right people saw what you really are, they'd have to believe. David. No, if your government captures me, they'll lock me away. They'll study me like an animal. I've seen how your people treat things they don't understand. Not all of us, David said. Some of us try to help. Before Zara could answer, they heard something that made them both freeze. Vehicles. Multiple engines coming up the mountain road toward David's cabin. Fast. Did you call someone? Zara asked. No. They looked out the window and saw black cars and military trucks, winding their way up the narrow road. Men in uniforms were getting out, setting up equipment, surrounding the cabin. How did they find us? David asked. Zara's face went pale. The signals. If I could detect the Dominion ships, then your people's technology could detect mine. She grabbed David's arm. I'm sorry. I've brought danger to you twice now. David looked at the soldiers outside, then at Zara. It's not your fault. A voice came through a loudspeaker from outside. This is Agent Johnson with Homeland Security. We know you're in there. Come out slowly with your hands visible. Zara started toward the door, but David stopped her. Wait, he said. Let me go first. Let me talk to them. David, no. They might hurt you because of me, and they'll definitely hurt you if you go out there alone. They stared at each other for a moment. Then Zara did something that surprised them both. She hugged him. It was awkward. She wasn't used to physical affection, but it was real. Thank you, she said, for everything, for teaching me what it means to be cared for. David hugged her back. We're going to get through this. They walked to the door together. David opened it slowly, his hands raised. Zara stepped out behind him, and the reaction was immediate. Soldiers raised their weapons. Officers spoke rapidly into radios, and everyone stared at the silver-blue woman with purple eyes. Agent Johnson stepped forward. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Dr. Chen, I'm going to need you to step away from the alien. Her name is Zara, David said, not moving. And she's not dangerous, sir. Please step aside. We have reports of unauthorized alien technology being used in this area. She's been trying to warn us. David said, There are others coming. Hostile aliens. Zara crashed here by accident. But the ones following her want to take over our planet. Agent Johnson looks skeptical. Sir, I need you to step away so we can secure the threat. She's not a threat. David stepped in front of Zara protectively. She's been helping me understand what's coming. If you lock her up, you lose the only person who can help us prepare. Zara put her hand on David's shoulder. It's okay, she said softly. Let them take me. No. David, look around. There are 50 soldiers here. Fighting will only get you hurt. She stepped around him and faced Agent Johnson. I surrender. But please, listen to what David is telling you. Your world is in danger. Agent Johnson studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured to his men, and they moved forward with restraints designed for someone much stronger than a normal human. Wait, David said desperately. Give us 5 minutes. Let her show you the signals she's been tracking. Let her prove what she's saying. Sir, I can't 3 days, Zara interrupted. You have 3 days before the first Dominion. Scouts arrive. Maybe less. She held up her wrist device. I can show you their approach patterns, their ship configurations, their weaponry. I can help you prepare. But only if you listen. Agent Johnson hesitated. David could see him weighing the options. Finally, he made a decision that surprised everyone. 5 minutes, he said. Show me what you've got. Zara activated her device, and holographic displays filled the air around them. Star charts, ship designs, tactical formations, all of it floating in the air like something from a science fiction movie. The soldiers stared in amazement. These are Dominion battlecruisers, Zara explained, pointing to massive ship designs. Each one carries enough firepower to level one of your cities. They're not coming to talk. They're coming to take your planet by force. Agent Johnson studied the displays. How do we know you're telling the truth? How do we know this isn't some kind of invasion plan? Zara looked at him steadily. Because if I wanted to help them invade, I wouldn't be warning you. I'd be hiding until they arrived. She gestured to David. This man saved my life when he could have let me die. He taught me things about kindness and friendship that my people never understood. Your species showed me more compassion in 1 month than I received in 30 years of military service. I won't let the Dominion destroy. Then David watched Agent Johnson's face change as he realized what Zara was really saying. She wasn't just offering to help Earth defend itself. She was choosing Earth over her own kind. You're defecting, Agent Johnson said. I'm choosing a side, Zara replied. The right side. Agent Johnson looked at the holographic displays again. Then at Zara, then at David. Pack your things, Dr. Chen. You're both coming with us. Are you arresting us? No, Agent Johnson said. I'm recruiting you. 6 months later, David stood in a room that didn't exist on any official building plans, watching Zara work with Earth's best military minds to prepare defenses against an alien invasion. She wore a specially designed uniform that accommodated her unique physiology, and her hair had grown longer, making her look more human and more alien at the same time. The Dominion ships use quantum tunneling drives, she explained to a room full of generals and scientists. They can appear anywhere in your solar system with almost no warning. But they have one weakness. They need to drop out of quantum space to fire their weapons. General Hayes, a stern woman who'd initially been skeptical of trusting an alien, leaned forward. How long do they stay vulnerable? 30 seconds, maybe 40. That's your window. David watched the humans round the table furiously taking notes. Over the past months, he'd seen Zara transform from a broken refugee into something he'd never expected. A teacher, a bridge between worlds, a protector of Earth. But he'd also seen the cost. Every day, she carried the weight of knowing that her presence had brought danger to the planet she'd grown to love. Every night, she worked tirelessly to prepare Earth for a war she'd never wanted. After the meeting, David found her on the observation deck of the underground facility, staring up at the stars through a hidden skylight. Thinking about home, he asked. Thinking about here, she said. This is home now. David joined her at the window. Any regrets? Zara was quiet for a moment. I thought you were going to ask me to teach you love so you could feel it romantically, like in your movies. David smiled. Is that what you wanted? No. What I got was so much better. She looked at him. I learned that love isn't just between partners. It's between friends. It's between people who choose to care about each other. It's between someone and the world they decide to protect. The Dominion ships will be here soon. Yes, the advanced scouts arrived yesterday. Our satellites detected them exactly where I predicted. David felt a chill. After months of preparation, the moment they'd been dreading was finally here. Are we ready? As ready as we can be. Your people learn fast. You're not as primitive as my kind believed. What happens if we win? Zara smiled. A real smile. Not the careful expression she'd worn when she first learned human customs. Then, I get to keep teaching your people about the galaxy, and you get to keep teaching me about humanity. And if we lose, we won't. Zara's voice carried the confidence of a warrior. But also something else. Hope. I've seen what humans can do when they fight for something they love. The Dominion has never faced anything like that. 3 days later, the main Dominion fleet arrived. Zara stood in Earth's command center, surrounded by humans who now trusted her completely, coordinating a defense that should have been impossible. Quantum signatures detected, called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communications station. 15 ships, just like Zara predicted. All units, this is command. General Hayes spoke into her headset. Operation Guardian is a go. Remember, you have 40 seconds when they drop out of quantum space. Make them count. David watched the displays showing Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet, military ships, retrofitted civilian vessels, and even some experimental craft, built using technologies Zara had helped them understand. It shouldn't have been enough to stop an alien invasion force, but it was. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Dominion fleet was either destroyed or retreating, and Earth had announced its presence to the galaxy in a way no one could ignore. Zara stood in the command center, surrounded by cheering humans, and realized something. That took her breath away. She found what she'd been searching for without knowing it, a place where she belonged, a people who valued her for more than her ability to fight, and a purpose that went beyond survival. You did it, David said, putting his arm around her shoulders. We did it. This is just the beginning, Zara replied. Now that the galaxy knows Earth can defend itself, everything changes. Some will want to trade with you. Others will want to test your strength. But you won't face any of it alone. David looked at his friend, because that's what she was, his friend, his family, his partner in the strangest adventure either of them could have imagined. What do you want to do now? Zara thought about it. 6 months ago, she would have said she wanted to return to her people, to resume her role as a warrior. But that person felt like a stranger now. I want to help build the first interstellar embassy on Earth, she said. I want to teach humans about the galaxy and teach the galaxy about humans. I want to make sure that what happened here, this friendship between different species, becomes the model for how we all interact. That sounds like a pretty good mission. It is. And David, thank you for answering my question. What question? Zara smiled, remembering that first desperate night when she'd asked him to teach her about love. You showed me that love isn't something you beg for or demand. It's something you choose to give, and something you earn by being worthy of it. I never expected to learn that. I never expected to find a family among the stars. David looked around the command center, at the humans and the alien technology working together, at the screen showing peaceful space where hours before there had been a battle, at Zara standing confidently among people who respected her. I never expected any of this either, he said. But I'm glad it happened. Zara nodded, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed cold and distant, but full of possibility. She'd lost one home among the stars, but she'd found another one, here on Earth, and this time she was strong enough to protect it. The defeated alien warrior who had once begged a human to love her had become something she never could have imagined. Earth's first ambassador to the stars, a bridge between worlds, and proof that sometimes the greatest victories come not from conquest, but from connection. She never expected that learning to love would teach her how to live. But that's exactly what happened, one day at a time. In a small cabin in the Oregon woods where a broken warrior met a kind scientist and discovered that home isn't a place you come from, it's a place you choose to stay.